Hello. So over to me. Okay.
Indeed.
For anybody visually impaired, it's a profile of me in my nice lounge. I've got a lantern above me. We had a nice extension to the house as I became more disabled. I know I look 21. I'm actually 54. I'm normally, those who do know me, I wear very loud, silly clothes normally. But after this meeting, I'm going off for a haircut. So I'm being sensible for once. And the reason I wear silly clothes is and silly hair is partly because it's a very cheap midlife crisis, but mostly because being a wheelchair user, I'm stared at, and anybody else with a wheelchair is you kind of used to that. And the message behind my silly clothes and silly hair is, well, stare at me because I look ridiculous, not because of my wheelchair, basically. That's me normally. But today, yeah, I've got a bad Santa beard, and I'm going to get a Mohican cut, ready for some big public speaking stuff I'm doing. So I am medically retired as of last year, but I'm just going to take you through my career. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I've had a good career with disability, not a bad one. I think there's a huge place for shouting angrily and pointing out the bad experiences. But at the same time, that we're known as scroungers and cripples and everything else by certain sections of the media. And so I think it's good to share the good news about being disabled or the good experiences of disability. My flavor of disability is multiple sclerosis. It's fairly advanced. For those who are visually impaired, I'm not going to be showing off my wheelchair right now, but this is my bladder. I've got a suprapubic catheter coming out of my tummy. I've got pretty much all the symptoms of MS, other than poor eyesight. So I have a tough time with fatigue and cog fog and all sorts, but I still have a brilliant life. And I tend to, um, I'm stuck at home quite a lot, but when I'm out, I'm bungee jumping and doing Tough Mudders and playing wheelchair rugby and just whatever nonsense I can get up to. But my career. So I was one of those annoying children at school who didn't have to work hard to get good exam results. I was a scholar, then I was head boy, captain of rugby, all that nonsense. And the result of that was that I came out of school without a clue of what I wanted to do because it had all been put on a plate to me. So I ran off around Europe. And having been a ski bum, I became a ski rep. Then I became a holiday rep. And again, I stress that I am 21, but actually in 1992, a theme park, before I was born, obviously, but a theme park east of Paris called Disneyland Paris, or Euro Disney at the time, opened, and I was part of the opening crew. And my first job there, while it was a building site and then during opening time for the first year, was looking after A-list celebrities. So I looked after Michael Jackson for 3 days, Kevin Costner, Clint Eastwood. I know for the younger ones, these are old names you'll have to look up. I didn't quite look after John Wayne. But Gloria Estefan was my favorite. Either her mother or father had MS, as it turns out, but I didn't know what MS was at the time. But 1992, I got my first symptoms of MS, which at the time were what I call nails and needles, 3 days of intense pins and needles down my left-hand side. And a couple of years later, bladder issues. But I lived in France, so I could pee anywhere behind bushes and in gateposts and whatever else. I'm sure France has cleaned up its act this century, but that's what I did. So I had a wonderful time, and through these celebrities and obviously the crews following the TV crews and journalists following us around, I found my calling, which was PR and media. So yeah, and that, just for those who don't know what that is, it's kind of getting us into the papers when we want to be in and keeping us out when we don't want to be in. So I was there for 10 years. I met my beautiful wife there. She was in another division of Disney. We went from snog in January to married in December, and went off on a 6-month honeymoon as a result, to kind of get to know each other. It was wonderful. Still didn't know about what the couple of things were going wrong with me. I had more symptoms by then, but hadn't put anything together because I was a bloke in my 20s, denying and not confronting the issues. Came back to the UK, and my first role after a bit more Disney nonsense was David Lloyd Leisure, where I was head of comms for them. That's a premium health and fitness brand. I was stumbling on my left foot a lot and spasming when I came off the oh gosh, what's it called when the cycle, you all sit around and cycle like mad for half an hour with a person shouting at you. But I still hadn't put it together. I was made redundant by Whitbread there because they were preparing to sell off David Lloyd Leisure. And I took on a job which, just because it was local, retail was not in my mind at all, but I joined a company that was called DSG International. It rebranded to Dixon's Retail. It rebranded after a merger to Dixon's Carphone, and it's now rebranded to Currys since I left. But so I joined in 2006, early 2006, and I loved it and fell in love with the retail atmosphere and got to know a lot of retail journalists. But soon after that, our first child had been born, and I mentioned to my wife how troubled I was getting out of bed to do one of the night feeds. And she said, look, we really need to get to the bottom of what's going on. So I went to a neurologist, which is a brain doctor, and a urologist, which is a down below doctor. And together, 15 years after my first symptoms, I was diagnosed with MS. It was relatively mild at the time. And I want to talk about 3 brilliant experiences with the Dixons and the Dixons team that makes me still an ambassador for Currys. Now it's Currys, even though I've got no shares with them, no involvement with them, and all the teams moved on. But I had such spinning. That's it. I just saw, but I had just such a brilliant treatment. So the first, on diagnosis, I blurted it out. My disability was invisible, so I could have kept it quiet. Maybe I should have done, because I had people from my wider circle. I had one person saying, "Oh, my mum died of MS." That was the first thing they said to me. But I told everybody, and the crew around me, while I went off for 2 weeks to punch walls and get drunk and cry and whatever else I did. Um, they researched my MS, both what I would be likely to go on. MS is a progressive disease, but also the psychology, the psychological impact of diagnosis. So the grieving process I might be going, the things I'd be feeling. So although I had that bad experience with one guy saying I'd be dead tomorrow, the close team were instantly allies and supportive. And that, I don't know if it took them half an hour or an hour's meeting, or they just read some bump online or whatever. But I had a team around me that dealt with me well straight away. And they were all non-disabled. They just had interest in dealing with me. And that was a fantastic experience to just let me know that I could carry on working. Brilliant. So we need allies. I'll talk about that a lot. Fast forward 2, 3, 4 years, not sure. And I'd gone downhill. The fatigue was hard work. I was, I think, at the walking stick stage, possibly with a walker. I'm not sure. But I was called into a room and I was very scared because I know the bad news stories of disability and when you're starting to struggle at work. Paraphrase. So I was called in by my boss and the group HR director, sort of head of 40,000 people. I was quite senior. And I feared either the guilty check, as in there, Mark, have a few grand, off you go into the sunset and feel sorry to yourself, or being made chief photocopier, as in put in a corner, we'll pay him the minimum wage, and the poor old bloke can feel sorry for himself in the corner. And actually what they said was, look, Mark, you are struggling. You haven't let us down at all, but at some point you are going to. What can we do together that you can create a job that will work for you and work for us? And it was just an amazing thing for them to do. And at that time, social media was growing in importance, and I was dealing with the journalists I would go into London to and get drunk with and whatever else you need to do for PR. But I was talking to them on Twitter and social media more than I would ever met them in real life. So we came up with this head of group social media, head of corporate social media. So not retweet this to get a win an iPad. It was results and issues management, and working with our CEO, Sebastian James. He runs Boots now. And at the time we were in the FTSE 100, and together with me and me nagging him, we made him into the most followed CEO on the FTSE 100 on Twitter. So I still had an important role, but it was a role. Oh, by the way, so we agreed on that job, and they also agreed to 4 days a week, but paying me 5 days a week. Yay. So that was the second time of allyship and support and creativity that cost nothing to the business, but benefited the business and just was just wonderful for me. More allyship and more creativity and just imagination and no cost. And then finally, we had, I live on Dunstable Downs, and that's where the conversation about the zoo comes through. Sorry, the animals came through, those who joined earlier. I live next to Whipsnade Zoo and I can hear the lions. But we had been in Hemel Hempstead. When we merged with Carphone Warehouse, we moved to Acton, which was a long way away. I was usually working from home, but every journey in was tough. I was getting tired. And I went to them after 11 years and said, look, I can't deal with this anymore. I need to go. And uh, they didn't need to pay me any money, but they gave me, and I don't talk about this in public just in case they're not that good with other people, but they gave me a couple of years' salary to look after myself and shape my future. So that was three wonderful examples of non-disabled people just dealing with me in a humane way that still benefited the business. And you can hear me talking about it. I buy lots of nonsense from Amazon, but anything electrical, I still buy from Currys. And I talk them up and I make a living out of public speaking about this story or versions of it. And they were just wonderful. So I just think sometimes, and we're in an echo chamber often in the D&I space and in the disability space. I always want to shout out for the non-disabled allies who will actually help spread our success and influence and fair treatment, etc., etc. So that's my key message. After I left Dixon's, I again, just as a result of this, I posted the traditional "Oh, it's been a wonderful time at Dixon's" post on LinkedIn. I'm not saying I was the first to do it, but it was when people didn't do that so often. And I put those 3 points in a post, and it went viral and got 875,000 views. And led to various opportunities that I took on. Chief of which was I became head of comms part-time for Shift.ms, which is a charity and a social network for people like myself with MS to talk about all the weird nonsense that we deal with. So I had a wonderful time with them. And various bits and bobs, and I do lots of ambassadorship and, like I said, public speaking now. Last year, as Cogfog and fatigue got the better of me, I took medical retirement, partly because it was too much, but partly to take some private pension money and convert the house fully to become wheelchair friendly. And nowadays I talk a lot and I joke a lot and I spend too much on silly clothes. Here endeth the lesson.